welcome to the third free workshop in the four-part series on use, misuse, and alternatives to pesticides, brought to you by the Asheville Alternatives to Pesticides Coalition. It's still in formation. I'm Marielle, and a couple things. I'm going to point out that our food doesn't have signs this evening, but it is from Sunny Point and Roots. It's really fantastic. Green Sage as well, and the Fridge Broad Food Co-op. We, unfortunately, are not going to have Trad Cotter this evening. He is ill with the flu. We just got word a couple hours ago, and so we apologize about not telling you guys before, but we're still going to have a fantastic program. Before we get started this evening, I'm going to tell you how our group initiated. I was on a call last summer with Trevor Taylor from the city of Eugene, Oregon. And we were discussing how they were able to pass their resolution banning neonicotinoids on city property. It was really the first of its kind. And he said to me that it happened mainly as a push from the people, from groups and from the anti-pesticide coalition there. And what they were doing to maintain this is to have groups adopt and maintain the park system there. So I thought to myself that Asheville is not so unlike Eugene, in that we have a lot of progressive entities pushing for better sustainability measures. And so this group was born from the collaborative and creative ideas of Phyllis Stiles, creator of Bee City and Campus USA, and Jillian Wolf here on the front row. She's from the Food Policy Council, a woman extraordinaire. And then Christina Ponton back there, pollinator advocate, and she's the sponsorship finding jewel. And then Randall Fletcher, whoever he may be. Yes, there he is. So Randall does many groups, but he's best known probably for Grass to Greens with Bountiful Cities. And tonight we're going to discuss towns that are reducing their pesticide footprint. Outside of promoting the use of alternatives by the individual, we also hope that these workshops will help inform all of us on where we'd like to see the community go with our use of pesticides. It's pretty obvious that the first step is simply in reduction. So tonight we have David Jantzen over here. He is going to be speaking to us on integrated pest management. David is the landscaping and grounds supervisor for the town of Carrboro. We also have Dr. Dee Eggers over here in the second row from our own UNC Asheville on methods to reduce pesticide footprint in the urban environment. And we have Dylan Rouse Hamilton, and he is going to be talking about Asheville and transition from Transition Asheville. So during this workshop, I would ask that you all think about where you'd like to see Asheville go with pesticide reduction in the next few years. Welcome, David. Yay.
Thank you. I'm just going to let this real quick. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Dave. I've been with the town of Carrboro for about 2.5 years at this point. Carrboro is a cute little town, not unlike Asheville, I think, in a lot of respects. A lot of environmentally and socially conscious people that are there, a lot of outdoorsy people. We're right next to Chapel Hill. We have a lot of UNC students who tend to live in town. We share a main street with them. So we're about 6.5 square miles and have about 19,500 people. So it's not too bad population-wise. The downtown area is pretty concentrated, but as we get farther out, you get a little more space and pretty decent canopy coverage, all things considered. We're pretty proud of our Bee City USA status, so we're a little proud there. That's actually a town hall, and through the trees there, you can see the pavilions for our town commons, and that's where we hold our farmers market.
Yeah, the commons.
That's right.
Awesome.
So peak season on Saturday, we might get around 5,000 people coming through for the farmers market on Saturday morning, which is pretty good. A lot of great produce, a lot of great farmers. They're really proud of their organic and low pesticide or pesticide-free status. I had a good conversation with one particular vendor one morning. He was really proud of his biological controls. I don't remember what his crop was. I don't remember what critter he had in his greenhouses. He knew he had them specially brought in, and he was glad that they were eating all of the competition. They were chomping on his plant. He was really, really proud of that. So that's kind of the type of community we've got, and how we like to focus our environmental energies. We have 6 main parks that we have to take care of. Anderson Park, or Carrboro Community Park, in the upper left-hand corner, is our largest park. We have a few smaller ones with various recreational activities, a lot of green space that we have to maintain. Anderson Park has a pretty good amount of space. We have 4 ball fields, open football field, dog park, fishing pond, disc golf course, and you can see it's a good blend of open green space and tree cover. All of those require a lot of different approaches when we're talking about dealing with pests, whether we're talking about pests dealing with the trees, we're talking about the grass, the turf, or even just unwanted weeds to begin with and how that impacts the recreational space. The Adams Tract is our other large parcel. It's 27 or so acres of preserved land, preservation land. And it shows 2 conservation easements, one with Orange County, and then one is specifically for the state, and it runs along Bowling Creek. We have, the forest there is about 50 years old. It used to be harvested timber. It's now protected. We have walking trails. We have a lot of invasive species we have to deal with in there as well. So we tend to focus on, as far as pests in the town of Carrboro, right now we talk about structural pests, things that tend to live in the dark and damp corners of our very old buildings in town. We don't have a lot of new town facilities, so there are easy access points for lots of different critters to get in that people don't want necessarily to have in those spaces. The other big thing that we take care of is nuisance vegetation. We don't necessarily at the moment do a lot of dealing with insect pests and how they attack our vegetation. We're going to be starting to shift a little bit more and try to focus a little bit more on that, but at the moment we tend to focus mainly on structural and vegetation, and some of that has to do with manpower, and until we can catalog and really get a good handle on what we have out there, inventory of our vegetation, and then start focusing on those pest issues, we won't be able to really focus on that. So, our least toxic IPM policy. One of our former aldermen was, he started an organization called Toxic Free NC back in the mid-'80s. He was one of the people who helped usher in the IPM policy back in '99. It's mostly safety focused, and when I say safety, we're talking about humans, we're talking about applicators and the general public when they come back to the space to use it. So residual residues that might be left on some of the turf if you're spraying for certain blights and bacterial. Runoff, drift, groundwater pollution, that kind of thing. And that's just from the language when you read the actual document. There may have been an intent that was a little bit more widespread for the wildlife, but it's not directly stated at the time. As we learn more about how pesticides impact our beneficial wildlife, that's going to be more prominent. Right now it only impacts town property. I don't see that changing anytime in the future, but we don't have any jurisdiction over private property. What it does is it requires the establishment of an IPM coordinator. It's one of my many hats, which helps involve, so keeping the sun off. Those hats are. Part of what I do is make sure that if anyone wants to use any kind of pesticide, I have to approve it. I have to find a real reason for its use. Most of the time there isn't one. Then from there, if there's a real reason for it, it goes to the Public Works Director, and then we notify the town manager. It's pretty hard to get to that point. We also have to do a lot of employee education. We want to make sure that everyone else in town who works for the town understands what they can and can't do, what the process is, and what our expectations are. And sometimes it puts a lot of responsibility back on the other department heads or their designee to make sure that everyone is managing their space properly. Because we're talking about cultural and mechanical controls mostly. And the other aspect that it deals with is phasing out some of the more harsh hazardous chemicals. These are the toxicity categories. The policy itself says that we can't use anything 1 through 3 without a major authorization. Really, number 4 you can use without authorization. It's just what's accepted. However, in the state of North Carolina, there isn't really a category 4 because everything has to, if it's going to be used as a pesticide, it has to be labeled as some sort of cautionary word. So everything baseline is caution. Real quick, 25B is what we are allowed to use without authorization. It's basically a list of ingredients that the EPA has determined is safe, therefore you can just use it. What that means is that the active ingredients are anything on this list, and the inactive ingredients are anything on a much longer list. You can use it for a pesticide without having to go through the regulation process, because these things are pre-approved. And you'll notice a lot of those things are good for both ants and vampires. It's a lot of food stuff, human food stuff. They've all passed threshold tests, and we all know that we can eat pepper and garlic and all that kind of good stuff. So those things we can use, which means we do have 2 things we can use without authorization. One, the one on the left, is a 25B product. We use that inside our buildings because, like I said, lots of cracks with ants and other more nasty critters that like to get in there. And it's just peppermint oil, wintergreen oil, some of those good things, botanicals, and helps to really keep down the population. The other one is not 25B. It's just an example of generic wasp killer. That is the other thing that was in that policy that we don't have to have permission for. But we don't use it much at all, and I'll get to that. What we try to do is focus on cultural and mechanical controls across the board all the time, unless there's some reason that it's just not going to work. So we have sticky traps right there on the floor. It's going to take care of our cockroaches, which works pretty well. We talk about making sure everything is clean. We talk about not eating in your office to keep the ants from finding a really great food source and coming back daily. And we talk about education. So I got a call from the fire department one day, and it turned out that there was a late shift firefighter who ended up in the hospital with an allergic reaction to some sort of bite. And the determination was it was a spider. And the fire department wanted to know, what could we spray to prevent this from happening again? I said probably nothing, for multiple reasons. One reason is because there aren't really good sprays for spiders. That's a pretty decent reason. Another good reason is because spider bites are really, really rare, and a reaction to said spider bite is even more rare. So to go guns blazing, spray the whole fire department down because of one minor incident, probably not the most practical approach. The other thing is, spiders are good. I said, so if you take if you get rid of your spiders, you're going to have a nuisance insect boom, because they're keeping all those things under control. And you don't want that. I said, conversely, if you keep everything clean and you don't have the food source for the spiders, you're not going to have the spiders. So it all goes back to those sponges in the beginning. So make sure the firefighters are cleaning up their messes and making everything perfectly clean and shiny, just like the fire trucks. And you guys will be good. It's also about managing expectations within the community. We have a park. Part of that park is leased to a daycare center with a playground. And they had concerns about snakes getting into the playground. Part of the lease agreement is they're maintaining everything within that playground. It's not considered town property at this point. Around that playground, we maintain. So part of what we do to make sure that we reduce the presence of snakes is to keep the grass mowed very short between the wood line and the fence, so that when the snakes do come out, they're not wanting to be exposed. They're probably going to stay closer to the wood line. But that's not necessarily going to prevent them from going out when they really, really, really want that sun. So we talked to them about establishing a 24-inch, maybe even just 18, inch high strip of impermeable material at the baseline of the chain link fence to keep the snakes from crawling through the fence. I mean, it's a very simple yet elegant solution, but also making sure that if the teachers are going to go out there, to make sure they just look around first. It's that kind of education and adjustment of expectations that's important so that people understand the limitations of what you can do in the natural environment, even without the need for pesticides. We also communicate very well, actually, with our third parties. So when the power company comes through, we have a couple of different organizations that have utility lines through town. They own easements, but when they cross into the public right-of-way, they know that if they were spraying any kind of herbicide, they have to stop. They cannot cross into the public right-of-way with their herbicide. They're very responsive to our requests, and they make sure that they notify the entire neighborhood before they do so and accept any kind of response from the residents. We can't prevent them from using it on their easements, their purchased easements, but we can prevent them from doing it right there. And back to more education. Anybody know what this is? Pretty? It's a cicada killer. It's a male cicada killer. They do not have stingers. They're 2 inches and change big. This is the front of Town Hall, and last year we had thousands of them making their little solitary holes in all the grounds around Town Hall. It freaked a lot of people out. These 2-inch plus wasps flying around, bumping into each other, flying into people. They don't care about people. They will not sting you. But people were really scared. They're a beneficial insect that control the cicada population. They're great. Again, they won't harm you. So what we ended up doing was putting up some public notice. We sent emails to all the town staff so they were aware that yes, these critters are here, they're going to be here for a few weeks, and they're going to go away. They're not going to hurt anybody. If you have any questions, please let me know. The other thing we did is we coned off the area. On either side of the planter there are very wide steps. We made sure there was just enough space for people to be able to get through, to enter the building without going so close to the planters that they felt threatened. And I think the combination of those things worked. We didn't spray anything, although we did get requests for it. Not sure what they were expecting. Maybe fumigate the entire outdoors. But there isn't really anything that works, and we weren't going to do it anyway. So separating people from the space and educating them about what they're afraid of is a good approach. So it's going to bring us to wasps and bees. So what do we do about them? Usually when someone comes to me and says we have a bee's nest, I say, where is it? And I say, it's in a tree. I say, okay. I say, is there anything that's going to, are there people around that are going to see this wasp's nest hanging from the tree? And they say, yes. I say, okay, we'll address it. We'll figure out, can we move that thing? Can we move the reason for being there so that the wasp's nest can stay there and be happy? If not, we'll reevaluate. Can we then keep the people away from it, like we did with the cicada killers in front of Town Hall? If we can't, can we move the nest without destroying the nest? Is there some kind of way we can do that? We had a paper wasp nest that was building underneath a window in a courtyard that people really like to open for their offices. And so instead of spraying it, I said, who wants to volunteer to come in really, really early, wear long sleeves and long pants, and get a really long broom handle and poke it off of the windowsill? And someone did that. That was my solution. That was a way to take care of the threat, even if it was really minor, without having to use herbicides. And it worked well. It was fine. They relocated. It was early enough in the season. It wasn't a full-size nest. They were just starting to build it. And then if all of those things fail, if you have a situation where you absolutely have to spray, you would. And that would be, for example, if we have some ground wasps underneath a slide in a playground. I mean, there isn't much else we can do about that one. We can't shut down the playground. We're just going to have to fight the war on that and take care of them. So that's very few and far between. We go through all those other steps first in order to make those calls. Same kind of thing with fire ants. We're trying to figure out what to do with fire ants. We do have the ability to use fire ant killer. We try not to. If it's in an open area where people are not going to congregate, they're going to be there. We're not going to go through that effort when they're out there. I have a little joke there about fighting fire with water. So there is a method of using hot water and pumping it down into the ant hills to eliminate the fire ant population. I haven't gotten that to work yet. Trying to deliver that much hot water in one location isn't the easiest thing, but I'm kind of hoping I can figure out a way to make that work. Quick anecdote. This was this morning in the cottage that we're staying in over here. We had a swarm of, swarmer termites that just had to just show up very briefly or quickly. So my wife was out and I said, can you pick up some borax and some, like a little handheld spray bottle? We put it together, sprayed it down, took care of the swarmers, wiped it all back up, boric acid. It works very well. It's indoors. We're not putting it out there. It helps to control everything without going crazy and going to Home Depot and getting something nuts. I got to call the person who owns this property and let them know that they need to check out some termites. So the other thing is vegetation management. That's the other big thing that we tend to use pesticides for, right? Herbicides. So we have a streets department, takes care of a lot of right-of-way properties and the utility strips in between the curb and the sidewalk. So a number of years ago, they did a comparison. They knew we had this policy. They wanted to figure out what they could get away with, what they could use to make things more efficient. Ended up not happening, by the way. But they did do a study here. They compared these two products. Avenger is D-limonene, which is essentially citric acid. It's in orange juice, it's just concentrated. So what it does is it defoliates the leaves, it removes the waxy cuticle on the leaf so that all the water basically evaporates. So if you spray it on a hot day, within an hour, the weed has lost all its water and shows up in bass. Its only real downside is that if you spill it on yourself, it's a little bit acidic, so it's going to cause some skin irritation. Again, they were looking at the safety aspect of pesticides, not necessarily the overall environmental impact. I should note that I haven't seen any environmental concerns for D-limonene as of yet. We don't use it, but they were thinking about it. This is what they did. They did a test pattern over the course of 30 days or so to see which product worked better. Obviously, the Roundup worked really, really well, but the other product held its ground pretty well as well. So if you are working and transitioning to go from using herbicides, maybe trying to whittle down, one of the steps along the way might be something like that before you get down to total zero pesticides. I've heard about vinegar. A lot of people like to use vinegar. We can't use vinegar because even though it's a food product, in order to have it be effective in the same way that the D-limonene is, where it, as an acid, removes the cuticle, the concentration has to be so high that it's no longer safe as a food product, and therefore it doesn't count as that 25E category. So steam. Back when Carrboro started its IPM policy, this was the big to-do. They contacted a company out of Australia and got this machine that pumps 200 degree water, so just below boiling, with an additive, a surfactant, that was intended to sort of basically, it acts as a foaming agent to concentrate the heat on the foliage and burn out the plant. It worked pretty well. I would add that the surfactant was vegetation-based, vegetable oil type thing, so it was still environmentally friendly. We don't use the additive anymore because we haven't been able to find something that's equivalent, so we're not putting in a chemical that's just as bad in lieu of an herbicide. So we just use the hot water right now. It's getting old though, and we're gonna have to look into replacing it soon because the parts aren't working as well as they used to. Well, we used it recently over at Town Commons. We have a lot of nutsedge and Bermuda grass coming into our mulch beds. I'm trying to protect the trees over there, so I wanted some mulch in there, and I'm fighting off all the nuisance vegetation there. But it worked okay for a few days. I mean, Bermuda and nutsedge is really aggressive, so it's not going to work all that well for that kind of application. But I do have a quick video that I will show everybody. All right, well,
You can act it out.
I can act it out. I can probably access it off the flash drive later if anyone wants to watch it. But it doesn't come out as a jet of hot water. It kind of just oozes out. It's really designed to have that other additive in it to really get that foaming action going. But within an hour, everything's shrilled up. The problem is it regenerated, right from that ground air stem, back up the next day. So that application didn't work well, but for others it does. And I wanted to add that I got a call from someone in California who had seen the article that I had a couple slides back. They were really interested in it, and they were doing more research on their own for their own program. UVM, I think, is using this on their crops. Not this particular piece of machinery, but they've gotten their own, and they're using it to get their fields, I think, once a season, once every few months. And it works really, really well. They're not using any herbicides for it, and it's low labor hours. So they just have to try. University of Vermont.
Oh.
I believe that's where it was. I can double check. The other thing is torches. Everyone likes to play with fire, so why not do it for work? It's around one of our baseball fields. We had some creeping grass coming in from the edges and base path. We just got a torch that connects to a 20-gallon tank, propane tank, and go at it. It actually works pretty well. It's quick. The only problem there is you're using gas and you're trying to reduce your other footprints, which, by the way, is one of the drawbacks to this, is that you're pulling around with a gas engine and you're running a diesel engine while you're doing it. So if you're trying to reduce your carbon footprint, there are drawbacks to that. So it's kind of a plus or minus situation. We're going to phase out the flame work for our fields by, we're going to be investing in a new ball field piece of equipment for grooming that has a saw cutter in the front. So you can just do one quick lap, maybe once a month, and clean up those edges and not have to use the flame split. But they do work well for weeds that are growing through sidewalk panels and things like that. So that's one option. When it comes to our turf program, we're shifting back to really staying on top of how we maintain it. When the policy was first put out, the idea for keeping weeds out of the turf was, well, we're going to mow it every day. That's really labor intensive, not so great for the people who have to do that every single day, and you're talking about a lot of burning fuel, a lot of emissions. So instead, we're going to go back to our knowledge of turf, and we're going to let that work for us. So on our Bermuda fields, we're going to keep it really short and really happy. Make Bermuda happy, and it will take care of the weeds if you're still mowing over those weeds. So we're getting a brand new reel mower because we're getting a new open field that's going in right now, all brand new Bermuda turf. When it comes to our fescue lawns, mow them really, really high. Make the fescue happy, have it help shade out all the other weeds. Let the competition between the plants do their job for us so that we don't have to go out there and spray anything. Give fertilizer when it needs it, make it all happy. So I'm going to move into my final chapter here. We had something, I don't know if any of you have ponds that you have to manage. This is our stocked fishing pond at Anderson Park, a large park. There's a walking trail around the outside. We started getting complaints that there was this stuff growing there that was getting hooked on everybody's fishing lines, and it was getting really heavy and it was problematic. So we went out and we looked at it. We identified it as creeping primrose, which is not a particularly great plant for your pond. And it was starting to take over. On the upper left there, that's parrot feather. It's another really bad one. And down the right-hand side is the creeping primrose. And it just kind of sits there in the water and it's these long, really fragile root systems. We also had some duckweed starting to grow. Duckweed is native. It's not bad in and of itself, but when the nutrient levels get so high that it overtakes everything, then you start looking at low oxygen levels and fish kills and things like that. So in order to balance your ecosystem, you got to take care of that duckweed. So what we did is we got a bunch of landscaping rakes, grading rakes, with really wide heads on them. They came with pool noodles as floats. And they had these 11-foot handles, and then they had like 20 feet of rope on them. You throw them out into the pond, and then you start pulling back all of that primrose and removing it by hand. We could have dumped in something, somebody from the state said, well, there are these products, you can use this, and we said, well, we can't really use that. We've got kids who come here, we've got the environment to worry about, we have all sorts of reasons why we can't just start putting things in the pond, because recreational programs will go down until it's taken care of, we're going to shut the whole thing down, all sorts of stuff. Logistically, it's a nightmare. So we're going to spend some time. It took everybody about a week to go around the whole pond. I think it was approved for pulling that stuff out, pulling it onto the bank, letting it dry out. Once it dried out, it was light enough. And just toss it off in the woods. It's going to die out. It needs water. It needs to be an aquatic plant. It's fine. But then you have the root systems to worry about. And they're going to stay in there because they break really easily. And they're going to grow back. It's very, very prolific. What the representative from the state recommended is a winter drawdown. And what that does is it exposes the shoreline during the coldest months so that those roots dry out and freeze out. If you do that in succession over a couple seasons, a couple winter seasons, you're going to see a great reduction in your primrose. And we saw a reduction the very first year. We pulled it all out, we did a winter drawdown, and we saw immediate results. We have not had a primrose infestation yet since we've done that. The way we did this, because we didn't want to have a pump running full time, is one of the guys said, well, what if we do a siphon? I said, it's a great idea, let's do a siphon. So they engineered it, they did the math, they went and got a 4-inch PVC pipe. They put one end in the water, there's a one-way valve right there, that little T-joint there. It goes up over the walkway and down the other side of the dam into the spillway below. And part of the reason was because the old gate valve on the spillway is jammed shut, so we couldn't just go out there and open it. And they grabbed some 5-gallon buckets, filled up the top of the siphon. Once it was full, they unplugged the bottom, and boom, 2 days later, dropped everything down to that. It's fantastic. So you don't have a gas engine running. You don't have to have someone out there. You can calculate the flow rate, come back as many hours later as you knew you needed to come back, and it was good. Posted some science, people got to learn something, back to education. It's great. But then the duckweed exploded.
Oh, no.
So then we had a new problem on our hands. So what did we do? Well, we started out with pool nets, fishing leaves out of the pool. It's pretty heavy when it's wet, so that didn't work. Broke those off. We were able to contain some of it in the very shallow end, but silt fence didn't really work very well because you're trying to shove silt fence into silt mud. Came up with a boom idea. One of the guys in our division came up with this idea. He was surfing YouTube and got some good ideas from it. Basically run a cable across with pipe insulation. And floats there like a pool noodle and keeps everything from moving back south. When the wind is blowing north, they lift it up, hook it up to these eye hooks there, let the water just blow in, let all the duckweed go into the containment area, and then it drop back down until we have a chance to, oh wait a minute, to siphon it out. This, by the way, was a failed idea, but you gotta get creative. It was almost functional, except the motion of the paddle made a little eddy and it swirled the duckweed back out, so it wouldn't actually collect in the net there. But we tried. You know, you got to try different things to make it work, and it's fun to do. And when you have something that works really well, you get really excited about it. So someone saw on YouTube an organization that made pond skimmers out of a recycling container, a trash pump, like a 3-inch gas-powered trash pump, and that's about it. I will maybe show a video in a minute if I can get that to work. But all that duckweed just gets sucked right in there, goes up the tube. And we tried to corral it, by the way. It was I don't know, $20 from Lowe's, just some mesh and some screen, zip tied to it. Zip ties great for everything. Used some hay bales as a screen. You can see all the duckweed piled up here on the edges. We'd scoop it out, and then the water would run back down the slope, more filtration along the grass there, and then back into the pond, so we weren't draining the pond during the summer when the fish needed that water. And that stuff is really great fertilizer, by the way. Once it dries out, take it, mix it in as an amendment, do all sorts of good stuff. So that was a really fun project, working really well. We've got most of that duckweed contained in that short, shallow end of the pond. The rest of it's clear, and every few weeks or month or so, we'd go out and fire up the pump again. And we're coming up with a few more creative options. We're thinking maybe a conveyor belt, and we're thinking of maybe some sort of floaty pond skimmer thing that kind of combines everything. But we want to reduce the amount of gas that we're using when we're doing this pumping thing. So what's coming up next for us is we're going to go back to focusing on dealing with pests that attack our vegetation. Since we haven't really been focusing on that, we're going to go there. We're also, like I said, trying to focus on more efficient mechanical control. So we're investing in better equipment with lower emissions, with higher production rates. All those things you want, we're going to try and invest and investigate in those things. And of course, continued education. Really getting in with everyone else in the town as employees so that they can help understand why it is we do the things we do. We're not just sitting there folding our arms saying, no, we're not going to spray. There are reasons, and they're very practical reasons. And of course, the public. And real quick, I just wanted to know if anyone saw this article. This was the Washington Post, but it's been out there. It's kind of neat, but it's a really, I have this up here because I just want to make the point that we always have to be on top of what's going on with pesticides in the world. I think London, this article talks about how, not London, but the UK had a 2-year ban on these substances while they were trying to figure stuff out and stuff for review. And we haven't actually banned them yet. But staying on top of that so that we have the research and we can make educated decisions is how we're going to kind of move forward. So that's it.